My husband doesn't like to go out much. It's not something that I've ever faulted him for or been mad at him about. We've never gotten in fights about it till now, and it's something he told me up front when we had first gotten in the relationship 4 years ago. I'm never going to be the kind of person that likes to go out a lot. I just want to hang out at home. And I of course said that it was fine because that's not a flaw to me, it's just a character trait. I used to suffer from depression due to a lot of traumas in my life. I found it really hard to go outside at all, and especially alone. I missed out on a lot of experiences because of this. In our first year of dating, he got me to have more confidence in myself, so I stopped hiding. I got a therapist and have been on a wonderful little antidepressant. We got married 1 year later and I'm still happier than I have ever been, and I'm incredibly grateful to have him in my life. That hasn't changed one bit. Now, I know that this isn't what he does. I know that he doesn't stay inside because he's depressed, it's because it's in his nature to be a house cat. And like I said, I'm still fine with that. Lately he's not okay with me doing this, though. If I ask him if he wants to see a movie with me and he said no, or the more common, I don't know, maybe, I'll usually ask him 2 more times, and then if he still says no, or maybe I'll go by myself. It's the same with going out to dinner, taking little classes, etc. We had fun with this at first. I would come home from doing the thing and then I would excitedly tell him what I'd done and the people I'd met. He'd happily listen and hug me and kiss me on the forehead. It was a really beautiful thing. At one point we called it My Little Adventures, and I would take Polaroid pictures and show them to him and then hang them on the kitchen wall. It was a seriously beautiful point in our relationship, and the times that we would go out and take Polaroids together were some of the happiest times in my life. I even made it a point to have us go to things that he liked to do. It was great. It was seriously so great. About 2 years ago I asked him, "Hey, I've been really passionate about learning a language and eventually going to this language's place of origin. Do you want to study it with me and then go there too?" And he said no to the language, but maybe to going with me. Cut to now, and I'm pretty good at this language. I decided about 4 months ago that I am going to this place. I asked he would still like to come with me, and he said no and got kind of upset that I had learned this language without him. "You're the one that's going to know anything. There's really no point in me going." I was kind of taken aback because during the process he was really supportive. I didn't really push it, but I apologized and went somewhere else to clear my head about things, and we were fine later on that day. I bought the tickets for me and my mother to go to the place about 4 weeks ago, and ever since then, things have been really tense. If I ask him to do minor things, like come to the grocery store with me, he gets a bit of an attitude. I can tell that he knows this is ridiculous though, because he'll say sorry almost immediately and be sad and quiet the rest of the time. I've tried to talk to him about what's bothering him, but he keeps either saying that it's nothing and he doesn't want to talk about it, or will tell me not to press it and then get mad and leave. I don't know what to do at this point. Our relationship has been so great, but I can feel things being strained. I can feel him kind of slipping away. I don't know what to do. I thought about buying him a ticket to the place anyway and surprising him, because I really would love it if he could go with me, and I know for a fact it's somewhere he's always been interested in. But I also don't want to force him, because I hate forcing people to do things. However, I also don't want to stop having these experiences for myself just because he doesn't want to. I've never faulted him for wanting to be at home, so why is he faulting me for wanting to be outside? I don't know how to talk to him or what to say. If I have to stop doing things, then I guess I will. But I also feel bad for having to stop, but it's not worth getting a divorce over or having things escalate that bad. I just don't know what to do or where to go from here. We had a bit of a long talk. I'm kind of a mix of exhausted, drained, and excited now. He said he feels like he's drowning in my success. I said I would learn a language, and I did it. I said I would lose 180 pounds, and I did it earlier in our relationship and got the skin surgery. I have a pretty stress-free job, and it's getting to him. He's been trying really hard to just be happy, but it's hard. He understands that it's wrong to feel this way, and between feeling guilty about it and feeling this way at all, it's just been taking its toll. He also has a skin condition that makes him feel cautious of going outside, especially in another country. I never thought this would be the problem, because he's always acted as though it's not a bother to him at all and he doesn't care. He's going to keep trying though. And to seek therapy independent of me because he thinks that he also may really be suffering from depression. Now, I have to say that we do have communication problems. Our friendship, 2 years before dating, started off long distance in Antwerp, so we're still kind of better with text talking than out loud speaking. Sometimes we have a hard time saying when things are bothering us out loud. So we'll text it out and then read off of that text because we find it hard to verbalize, and sometimes we just take things harder than we should. We've agreed to go to marriage counseling and we're making an appointment together tomorrow, so there are good things afoot. For more good news, he's agreed to go on vacation with me and my mother. I messed up in this, too. I like to think that hearing maybe or other apathetic answers instead of just yes or no didn't bother me, but it did. And sometimes, as some people pointed out, I would get kind of passive-aggressive about it. I'd ask him simply because it meant that I tried at times. I'm not proud of it, but it happened. I'm going to work on that more in myself as well. I am a 28 years old female was named after a really obscure character from Greek mythology. My preferred nickname is taken from the end of my name. I always introduce myself with I'm my name, but you can call me nickname. None of my co-workers in the small business we work for have ever had a problem with this before, until Megan, the niece of Jeff, one of the 2 owners, was hired. Jeff and Dave co-own the business, but Dave does the actual day-to-day running of the business. I introduced myself and my nickname as usual, but she immediately said that Bessie, not the actual name, would be a better nickname because it comes from the beginning of my name and that she liked it better. I told her I really didn't like that nickname and wouldn't answer to it and asked her to please not call me Bessie, but she insisted that it was so much prettier and that I just needed to get used to it. For the next 2 months she tried to call me Bessie, but I completely ignored her whenever she addressed me that way. Even when I knew she really needed help with something. She would call my desk phone and say, "Hey, Bessie," I would reply, "You have the wrong number, there's no Bessie here," and hang up. She then tried to get some of the employees outside the office to start calling me Bessie, but I quickly shut that down. I usually finish my work early and help them with a lot of tedious little things that aren't part of my job description, and threatened to stop helping them unless they used my preferred nickname. Friday she decided she was going to get me to respond to Bessie no matter what. We have an open office design but are at opposite ends. She started calling out Bessie in a sing-song voiceover and over again to try and annoy me enough to respond. Other co-workers got annoyed, most telling her to stop and one Lisa telling me to just let her call me Bessie already. I refused and she kept calling out Bessie louder and louder, until Dave barged in. He'd been on a conference call with an important client and could hear her yelling from his office down the hall. He told her to be quiet and that if she called me Bessie one more time, he'd write her up and dock her pay. Later, Megan cornered me in the break room, called me in for getting her in trouble and called me Bessie again for good measure just as Dave was walking in to heat up his lunch. He gave her a stern look and said, "I warned you." Then he walked to HR to have her written up. Lisa is saying I'm the for never helping Megan and that, if I had been nicer or hadn't fought her so hard on the nickname, she probably would have given up on it a while ago, but because I made such a big deal out of it, it became a challenge. I am a gemologist. I spend my days in the lab testing and identifying stones. From the nature of my work, I also have a large and valuable collection of jewelry but also gem specimens that I keep in a safe I specifically bought and had installed to keep them safe. I also have a second smaller safe for keeping important documents like passports. I own my home and my boyfriend of 2 years recently moved in as he was renting before. I gave him the code to the smaller safe so he could put valuables in it, but he also wants the code for my gem safe. Not to put anything in it, but he says because we are living together now I should trust him and give him the code. I've said no because he has no reason to open the safe as the only thing it's used for is storing my collection. He said he has no interest in my gem collection, doesn't want to look at them, but still wants the code to access them. This is causing tension because he says I should give it to him as a show of trust, and I said no. Because he literally has no reason to go in there, so he doesn't need the code. This is a 6-figure collection, so I'm not being difficult over a few little gems here. I am the only one who knows the code. The safe weighs nearly half a ton, it's bolted to the floor and wall and is from a company who makes safes, vaults and strong rooms for jewelers. You could bring the house down around it and it would still be intact. All of the gems and jewelry in the safe are mine and mine alone. I do not keep any clients' jewelry at home. For my other business doing valuations, I rent a separate space and keep client items there. I will give an update once things have panned out. I've moved all of my personal docs out of the little safe and into my gem safe. I told him he isn't getting the code and I will die on this hill. He has no reason to have it, and his continued lack of respect by the pushing of my boundaries wasn't okay. I felt like he was trying to manipulate me by making it about trust. After a lot of back and forth, he finally admitted that he wanted access to the safe, because he didn't feel like I was sharing the whole house with him. Because I insisted on a tenancy agreement rather than just letting him move in. And he didn't like that part of where he lived was off limits to him. He was also insecure and resented that I have more money than him and own a home whilst he doesn't. He had made a few comments about this before, but I didn't realize it was such a big issue for him. He also said that by keeping him out of the safe made him feel like I thought he was lesser than me, and that it made him feel like I was treating him like a child. I told him if that's how he feels, then this is not the right relationship for either of us, and that it was best we break up. He was shocked that I was ending things over this, cried and asked me to reconsider. When I said no, he then got angry. Called me a stuck-up B***tch, said he was better off without me anyway, and went to his friends. I told him via text he had 30 days before he had to leave, as per the tenancy agreement. So he didn't need to stay at a friend's. He said he would be gone by the end of the week. 2 days later he came back and packed up all of his stuff and left. He's staying with his friend now. I have changed all the locks. I have an alarm and CCTV system that's professionally monitored, and I have changed the verbal password I have to give when you call up as a precaution. I've checked all of my collection and it hasn't been touched. I also am giving my solicitor the code and safe deposit details to be passed to my executor in the event of my death. I feel horrible because despite all of this I love him. I should have a partner who not only respects my boundaries but takes an interest. I'm pretty cut up right now and missing him, but I know I'll be okay. I have great friends and family around me. Also, diamonds are a girl's best friend, and I have a few knocking around to help cheer me up. I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to, very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem, and though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me he had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies, or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night. Because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, "girlfriend," or "love of my life," were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask. Which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. Two things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single, and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple, and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to, this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end, I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action, seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer, or something completely different just the same. Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days, and his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship, this has been a first in my life truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated.